Welcome back, you Washington Football Maniacs. I'm your host, Brandon Scott. Today we are going to look at all of the coach hirings, kind of an overview to look at all the coach hirings this year in the offseason for the Washington Commanders. Now, I know that video was just put out by Greg, kind of doing the same thing, but we're going to look at the background, and I'm going to kind of give you my take on everything. So definitely tune in, and let's get into it. So let's, again, today we are going to look at um, the coaching hires for the Washington Commanders. Kind of do a background of each one and kind of my take, whether it's a good move, bad move, and kind of go from there. But before you do, before we get into it, if you're not a member of the Washington Football Maniacs, definitely consider joining the Washington Football Maniacs. We got a lot of good content coming your way, man. We are definitely getting into the offseason. We're going to do a lot of stuff pertaining to the free agency, the draft, a lot of special guests. So definitely tune in because we have a lot of fun on this channel. So definitely consider being a member. Like, subscribe, definitely comment below. Let me know what you guys think of the coaching hires, and we'll go from there. So let's get into it. Now, obviously, new head coach Dan Quinn is solidifying his coaching staff, and obviously the big names as far as his hires this year have been Joe Witt Jr. as the new defensive coordinator and Cliff Kingsbury as the new offensive coordinator. But looking at some more moves that have been made, and even then we can kind of look at those positions real fast. And obviously looking at Cliff Kingsbury, the new offensive coordinator, we know what his background is. The previous offensive coordinator in 2023 was Eric Bieniemy. Kingsbury, can't say enough about his relationship not only to Kyler Murray in Arizona, but also with Caleb Williams at USC. He's a well-known coach who gets the best out of his quarterback. Now, obviously, the opinion varies as far as his head coaching history. He's had his good moments, his bad moments. I'm not going to get into that, but he's obviously a guy who can get the most out of your quarterback. And again, looking at two big examples are Kyler Murray at Arizona and his relationship with Caleb Williams at USC. So I think, is it a good, bad move? I definitely think it's a good move. He's an offensive guy who he's going to turn this into a juggernaut offensively. And like I said, whether we decide to build around Sam Howell, whether we go out and get Caleb Williams, Jalen Daniels, Drake May, he's going to get the best out of the quarterback. So to me, that is a really, really good move. But going back to the previous offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, like I said, this is not let me say this. He had his struggles, but I think that he eventually will find another job. But I think it was a good move moving on to Cliff Kingsbury, in my opinion, because like I said, he is known to be a quarterback guy. He's going to get the most out of the quarterback. Defensive coordinator, Joe Witt Jr. Now, looking at Joe Witt Jr., obviously he is replacing Jack Del Rio and / Ron Rivera at defensive coordinator. Now, if you look at the work he's done with Trayvon Diggs and DeRon Bland, I think he's going to be a really good move for this defense, man. I think he's a player's coach, but he's a player's coach that, again, kind of like Dan Quinn, he's a player's coach who holds his players to a standard. And obviously he's got his work cut out for him. Some guys looking at what is he going to do, Emmanuel Forbes Jr.? Do we go out and get a lockdown corner? Do we throw Emmanuel Forbes Jr. to the other side? What is can he get the most out of Jamin Davis? What does he do with Andre Jones Jr. and KJ Henry? Do they still go out in free agency in the draft and find bookends, or does KJ Henry and Andre Jones Jr. get a look? But I think this is a good move. Has a good working history with head coach Dan Quinn. So obviously his track record as a defensive coordinator is not very long, but I think that just build on the fact that what he's done with those two players in Dallas, Bland and Diggs, and the fact that he has a great relationship with Dan Quinn, I think we're going to be all right. So let's get into some of these hires that happened this week. The new special teams coordinator is Larry Izzo. So Larry Izzo, he began with the New York Giants in 2011 before 2 years as a Houston Texans special teams coordinator. He did join the Seahawks in 2018 and became a full-time coordinator in 2021. So obviously 2023 special teams coordinator was Nate Kaiser. Now looking at Larry Izzo, special teams is an area where I don't think we were really that bad. Now, obviously, we had to find a new kick returner. James Crowder is not going to be here next year. But you saw some good moments at special teams. So looking at his history, it's pretty good hire. Like I said, his track record, he was a special teams player. He actually is the all-time leader in special teams tackles, 298, following a 14-year career with the Dolphins, the Patriots, and the Jets. So he's been there and he's done that. So he's, again, kind of looking at offensive coordinator when I say, he's going to Kingsbury's going to get the best out of the quarterback. And the same thing with the defense coordinator. You have a coach at special teams who been there, he's done that, and he's going to get the best out of our special teams, which is an area where a lot of people don't put a lot of emphasis. But if you look at the fact that, the last 3 years under Ron Rivera, man, we've had times where we struggled mightily in special teams. So I think this is definitely a good hire on our part. So moving on, the new offensive assistant, Brian Johnson, the former offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, obviously, with the Philadelphia Eagles just breaking down and it's going down the way they did this previous season, he got a lot of heat. Obviously, Jalen Hurts got a lot of heat. Nick Sirianni got a lot of heat. But, I mean, was it entirely on Brian Johnson? I'm not going to say that, but I definitely, he had a piece of it, but it wasn't on him. So looking at his history a little bit, taking a look at it, obviously he is replacing Ken Zampese. That is a heck of a name. So looking at his history real quick, he did interview for the Falcons and Titans head coach openings, plus offensive coordinator opportunities before landing with us. And I think that you got to look at his experience. Yeah, you're looking at the Eagles and how their season ended. I think that he is still a guy that you want in the building. Now, he's not coming here to be a coordinator. A lot of people are upset because they thought he was coming here to be an offensive coordinator. No, but he's a guy who knows how to do his job. He's definitely got experience in this league. And I think that with him being the offensive assistant behind Cliff Kingsbury, you got two like minds, two guys who, again, know how to get the best out of our offense. And so I'm not going to blame him for the – I'm not going to say I'm not going to blame him, but I don't really care because I'm a Commanders fan. I'm not an Eagles fan, so I don't care how it went wrong. It's just not my problem. But looking at what he provides, this team, I think it is definitely a good move. So moving on to Vita Pritchard, quarterback's coach. He is actually coming back. He was 2023's the Washington Commanders quarterback's coach. So let's see. Let's do a little background with him. Now he turned 37 on February 20th. As somebody who's 38, he is definitely still young. But if you look at what they did to develop Sam Howell, I think you got to say that he had a hand in that. Now, Sam Howell, okay, let's look at the bad. Let's look at the good, right? Looking at the bad, we're gonna do the bad first. Obviously, as the season went on, his production decreased. Now, a lot of variables into that. I'm gonna say that, in my opinion, the biggest reason for that is, if you look at how many times Eric Bieniemy had him going back to pass, man, I think his body just broke down. I think it's got to the point where he dropped back so many times to where, and I don't think that Eric Bieniemy really utilized the run game, and it just broke him down. But you got to give a lot of credit. But you got to give credit to Pritchard because, look, Sam Howell made those throws. He showed moxie. He showed presence. He showed that he can make those throws. He showed that he can be accurate. He can throw the deep ball. If you look at passes like that catch by Terry McLaurin against the Denver Broncos, that is a throw that you don't see many people make. So a lot of that goes to Pritchard, man, to Vita Pritchard, and what he's done with Sam Howell. So I think that, again, kind of looking at Brian Johnson and backing up Cliff Kingsbury, having him back as the quarterback guy, I think he's going to do well to support Cliff Kingsbury as far as running this offensive side of the ball for the Washington Commanders. So I like I said, most of these hires, I'm going to admit, are good hires in my opinion. Head coach Dan Quinn is definitely filling out the coaching room, man. He's really filling out his staff, man, with people that know how to do their jobs at a high level. So moving on, let's go down the list. Bobby Ingram, wide receivers coach. He is Bobby Ingram is entering his second decade coaching after a 14-year career as an NFL wideout. I don't know how many people remember Bobby Ingram. I do. So he is the new, or not the new. He was our previous wide receivers coach. So he is actually coming back next year. So again, look at the wide receiver group. Now, Terry McLaurin, obviously I think that he needs somebody opposite him, a physical receiver. I think that at this point, Jahan Dawson should be a slot guy. We'll see if Curtis Samuel comes back. I think that is kind of 50-50. I think that with this new offense under Cliff Kingsbury, we could definitely utilize Curtis Samuel, but we don't necessarily need to retain him because this is a wide receiver heavy draft, in my opinion. So even if you want to go in free agency, get a guy like Mike Evans, go get a physical guy opposite Terry McLaurin. But saying that, this wide receiver group with Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dawson, and Curtis Samuel, man, they they were really a threat. I mean, we had our struggles, and I think a lot of it had to do with play calling. And I'm not gonna harp on Eric Bieniemy. He obviously showed that he can be a decent coordinator. It's just the thing was I don't think he really utilized or took advantage of the talent he had in DC, and he was using the same blueprint that he had in Kansas City, and he didn't utilize the run game enough. I didn't feel like he really put this receiver group in the best position to be successful, in my opinion. So I think that Bobby Ingram is a really good move bringing him back. Moving on to tight ends coach. Now, last year we had Todd Storm. This year we had David Ray. Now, David Ray, age 43, hooked up with Kingsbury for a season at Texas Tech, and then later with the Arizona Cardinals, where he coached the wide receivers. The former University of Iowa quarterback has coached several offensive positions, but never run a tight end room. So this is his first time running a tight ends room. Now, obviously, Amani Rogers coming off Achilles tear. There's some talent here. Cole Turner's another candidate. Now, do I think that we need to add a piece to the tight end room? Absolutely. But I think that there is talent here. So we'll see. I don't know if it's really good or bad because, like I said, he can coach receivers. And if you look at Texas Tech underneath Kingsbury and even Arizona Cardinals, they got a lot out of their receivers, man. So I think he's a coach where he's going to get a lot out of his players. And I'm going to say that about a lot of coaches on this list because I think that's the MO with Dan Quinn. I think that you're going to see a lot of coaches on here that, again, this is going to be a staff that's going to have a lot of guys who are players coach. But unlike Ron Rivera, who was a players coach to a fault, you could be a players coach that you can hold your players to a standard. And you can say that about a lot of guys on this list. And I think that's a big thing about changing the culture in DC for the Washington Commanders that, yeah, you're going to have a coach that is very, very a player-friendly coach, but a guy that, yeah, he could have a little bit of EB in him too and digging some players and really hold them to a standard, which I think is what we desperately need here in DC. So moving on, the new offensive line coach, Bobby Johnson. Now, looking at what's going on, the fact that we gave up 65 sacks last year, and then looking at the fact that the Giants led the league with 85 sacks last year, just like Greg said in the video, kind of covering the same subject matter, is this really an upgrade? We'll see, man, because you can look at several factors, including the lack of development with Evan Neal. The fact that we had 65 sacks and then he went ahead and said, "Hold my beer," and they had 85. I don't know if that's an upgrade, but we'll see, man. We'll see how he does here. Like I said, I'm willing to give him a chance. O-line is an area that we desperately need to an upgrade. Whether it's through free agency, whether it's through the draft, we need to bolster this O-line because whether we decide to stick with Sam Howell or go with a rookie quarterback, we need an O-line that's going to give this quarterback enough time to throw. Now, saying that, looking at these quarterbacks in the draft, the releases are on the faster side. Now, looking at Sam Howell, one of the biggest drawbacks I could say about Sam Howell was he took too long to get the ball out. And, obviously the O-line struggled. That's obvious. But you could say that, holding on to the ball too long really put the O-line in a position where it's kind of set them up for failure to a certain degree. So Sam Howell definitely needs to get the ball out faster. But with this, Bobby Johnson as the new offensive line coach, we'll see. Definitely gonna give him a chance. But I get it when if you're kind of leery about this move, because like I said, we struggled with 65 sacks and then the Giants led the league with 85. So we'll see. But I'm definitely holding out that he can definitely get this O-line up and popping. And looking at last year's O-line coach, it was Travell Wharton / Juan Castillo, who was also the run game coordinator. So we will see. And kind of looking at the background for Johnson real quick, his NFL coaching career, it began in 2010 with the Buffalo Bills it began in 2010, but he's most known from being with the Buffalo Bills from 2019 to 2021. And also he ran the tight end room over there. So again, definitely give him a chance. We'll see. I don't know if I'm really going to say an upgrade. It's kind of and I don't really want to say it's a degrade, but again, if you look at the track record for the New York Giants last year, I get it if you're kind of skeptical. So moving on to the rest of the coaching staff, John Pagano is now the senior defensive assistant. He actually coached outside linebackers for the Denver Broncos from 2020 to 2021, and that was his recent NFL job. And he actually overlapped Rivera in his early work with the Los Angeles, or at the time, San Diego Chargers. So our previous 2023 senior defensive assistant was Richard Rogers, who was also the safeties coach. So again, track record is very small, but I do see that again, head coach Dan Quinn is bringing in guys who are hard-nosed guys who are going to try to get the most out of the guys. And I know I've said that probably 3 or 4 times, but I think that's the biggest thing about this coaching staff, starting with head coach Dan Quinn, is that, we look at Ron Rivera, or former coach Ron Rivera, and yes, he was a player's coach. And in my opinion, it was to a fault. Again, with Dan Quinn, you got a guy who, yeah, he's going to be a player's coach. He's going to be a guy that they can talk to, but he's going to be a guy who's going to hold them to a standard, which is, again, something that is desperately needed with this organization. So definitely John Pagano, we're definitely going to see what he can provide with the team and definitely give him all the support you can. So rounding out the coaching staff, we got 4 more people on the list, so definitely rock with me. The new assistant defensive line coach replacing Ryan Kerrigan and Ryan Kerrigan ain't going nowhere, but we're going to talk about that in a minute, but is Sharif Floyd. He is the new assistant defensive line coach. So looking at a little of his background, he was initially coached by Quinn, at the University of Florida, which I remember watching him play. And he was actually a first-round defensive tackle selection by the Minnesota Vikings. But injuries cut his playing career short, and now he has pivoted to coaching in 2023. So, again, look, he's got experience. It's kind of like when we had I'm trying to think, man. We've had many former players come into Washington, and I think this is a good move. He's been there. He's done that. He knows what it takes to be a defensive player in the NFL, especially on the D line. So I think this would be a really good move, or this is a really good move by the organization, because Sharif Floyd, I get it. I don't know if you guys remember watching him, but he was a guy who played at a high level. Now, obviously, injuries derailed him, but I think having former players in here is definitely a really, really good move. So I definitely think it's a good move on the part of this organization. Talking about former players, Ken Norton Jr. is the new linebackers coach. Now, he is obviously the son of former heavyweight boxing champion Ken Norton Sr. So he's got a little toughness to him. He actually played linebacker with 3 Super Bowl title teams, and then moved into coaching Seattle from 2010 to 2014, where he served as the defensive coordinator. And he also served as defensive coordinator for the Oakland/Las Vegas Raiders from 2015 to 2017, and again with the Seattle Seahawks from 2018 to 2021. So he is returning to the NFL after 2 seasons at his alma mater, UCLA. So he is replacing Steve Russ as the 2023 linebackers coach. So again, this is a hard-nosed guy, man, who is going to toughen up this linebacker group, man, because, yes, we need a middle linebacker to be the quarterback of this defense, but we need somebody who's going to dig into Jamin Davis, man. Try to get him right, try to get the most out of him. So I think it's a really good move, which leads into the next guy, former Washington Redskins, a.k.a. Washington football team, a.k.a. Washington Commanders, Ryan Kerrigan, who, again, last year was the assistant defensive line coach. He is returning as the assistant linebackers coach and pass rush specialist. Good move. Great move. He was a legend in DC, being a linebacker, being an edge rusher, being a guy who played a lot of productive years for the Redskins and with the Washington football team. So I think bringing him back is a really, really good move for this organization, man, because, again, you have a guy who's been there and done that and knows the ins and outs and how to play the position. So I think he's going to get the most out of his linebacker group, because, again, this linebacker group needs some work. Jamin Davis, what is his future with his organization? We need a middle linebacker. We need another linebacker. There's some work, and I definitely think that Peters is going to get the reinforcements that we need. He's replacing Vincent Rivera, who was the previous assistant linebackers coach. So we got one more person on the list. So Jason Simmons, depending on how you want to view it, is the new secondary and pass game coordinator. So you kind of look at it, intended or not, Quinn's first 2 defensive coaching hires, Wynn and Simmons, have primarily focused on secondary. But if you look at the fact that, again, kind of look at the background for Simmons, man. He did play 121 games at defensive back with Pittsburgh and Houston from 1998 to 2007. Also, he had coaching reps with Witt at Green Bay from 2011 to 2028, and Washington senior personnel executive Marty Herney in 2020, the GM's last season in Carolina. So, he's got experience. And look, our secondary needs work. We need to get these guys coached up. So, we need all the coaches we need in the room to get this, because right now, in my opinion, you can look at O-line, you can look at linebacker. But to me, the secondary is one of the areas, if that need the most work outside the O-line. It needs work. We need a lockdown corner. We need to see what we have in Emmanuel Forbes Jr. Kendall Fuller is gone. St. Juice, what is his future here? Safeties, do we bring back Cam Curl? What do we do with Quan Martin? A lot of questions with the secondary. So I think that with him and Joe Whitman, you got guys who are going to get this secondary coached up. And obviously, look, we're going into the free agency. We're going towards the draft. Adam Peters, he's going to find reinforcements, man. But with this coaching staff, I think they're going to be able to coach this team up. So overall, in closing, a lot of good hires, man. A lot of former players, man. I mean, look at, Sharif Floyd, again, former Gator, former Viking, knows what he's doing. I'm definitely intrigued to see what he can do as a coach. Ryan Kerrigan, again, long-time Redskin. He did the job at a high level, and he's probably one of my favorite Redskins overall, or watch football team members, or watch Commanders, whatever you want to flip it. But and then Ken Norton Jr., obviously, tough guy, man. If you ever watch him play, obviously the pedigree, and his dad, heavyweight champion. So you got a lot of toughness. You have a coaching staff who, again, is going to be relatable to the players, obviously with several of them being former players, but you got a hard-nosed coaching staff that is going to hold this team to a standard. And I think that's what we need. And that's the one thing I did like about Eric Bieniemy, that he did was toughen these guys. But here's the thing, man. This is a performance-driven league. And it's one thing being tough, but you got to perform. And I definitely think that overall, you look at that, the O-line coach, I get it. We'll see what we have. But overall, we definitely got upgrades in the coaching staff. So again, Dan Quinn, head coach Dan Quinn, definitely fill the staff out with guys who are going to get the best out of this team. So definitely appreciate you guys. Like I said, this is my take on the new hires. Like I said, definitely Greg already put a video out, so we both kind of put our spin on the new coaching staff and how they're going to do it. In my opinion, I am very optimistic. And obviously going towards free agency in the draft, this team is going to get better. And with the NFC East kind of in turmoil a little bit, who knows? This team could turn around faster and sooner than later. So definitely appreciate you guys tuning in today. And again, if you're not a member of the Washington Football Maniacs, definitely consider becoming a maniac, because we got a lot of good content coming your way. So definitely like, subscribe, comment below. Let me know what you guys think of the coaching hires. Are you in favor of them? Are you leery about them? I know a lot of you are going to have a lot of questions about O-line, but we'll see. So again, appreciate you guys, and we will see you guys next time. Peace and hail to the Washington Commanders.